have now completed our second week in the House. We started the week with the State of the State from the governor, from which we heard a litany of ideas he has. I guess you want to call it his agenda. But we also saw huge cuts. We know the budget has some issues, and unfortunately, we're at this point and we have no idea, no budget from the governor, so we don't know what cuts are going to still have to be made and how we're going to fund many of the things that he's put on his agenda. Of course, today we third read right to work, which was unfortunate, and we spent the majority of time arguing why it's not appropriate to allow the constituents to tell us what they feel about it. So we'll just have to see where that goes. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
So with the budget being in such a dire shape, have you deployed your team to look for savings in order to make sure savings in various areas in order to avoid cuts that hurt people?
At this point, we're just waiting on the governor's recommendations to see where we go with that. Obviously, we are very concerned about the needed services. How do you cut Medicaid? Those are services that people need. Education, we saw a huge cut to higher ed. We saw a smaller cut to K through 12, and while the argument is it didn't go to the classroom, ultimately it's going to trickle down to the classroom. So I think, again, we're waiting on the governor's recommendations to see where do we go with this and what's going to have to be cut. Obviously, there's going to be some pet projects that are going to have to go. But we still haven't stopped some of these big tax breaks that we are giving to special interest, and so we're going to have to take a hard look at those.
And Governor Brighton in his address talked about the topic was welfare reform, and said that anyone who gets a raise shouldn't lose benefits, but he didn't really lay out any plan or solution to get to what he wants to do or describe what it is he was hinting at. You have any suggestions for him?
Well, actually, I will say I absolutely agree with him. I have talked to several people who've said, while his numbers were a bit skewed, $12 an hour, but I have talked to folks who have said, my job offered me $1 raise, and I couldn't take it because they're going to cut off all my child care benefits. I'm going to lose my health care, and I can't afford that. So I applaud the governor for that. However, that means we got to spend some more dollars, and where's that coming from? So again, we need the budget, the governor to give us a budget, so that we know what he's looking at.
Going back to education, there's been during the governor's speech, he talked about education savings accounts for kids with disabilities, and there have been inklings in the Senate, especially about expanding school choice. Where do you stand on that, and what do you think about the education savings accounts?
He called it an education savings account. I call it a voucher. And I oppose to spending anything that we cannot use state dollars, taxpayer dollars, on public and private schools. And, we'll have to see, again, some more details in the governor's plan to see what his real idea is behind this.
Yeah, he seemed to limit it to just developmentally disabled students, but do you see that as the first step towards a bigger voucher program?
Absolutely. Anything else?
Cool.
Okay.